As a sub, I want to just go back to you. I mean, earlier on you mentioned about how you always have these jokes about your mother-in-law and everything. The reality is not specifically at you, but it does happen. We have it here in the UK as well.
Let it be on record, please. Don't cut this part out.
Okay, we have to be realistic that dealing with in-laws is not easy.
Dealing with in-laws is not easy.
Yeah.
I've never found in my own case that dealing with my in-laws was anything but easy. So that is part and parcel of the attitudes that are picked up in a society. And again, I will throw this in front of the entire body here, that we must realize our attitudes are formed at a very, very young age. Okay. We may think that as we've come into maturity and come of age and began to read Quran and say our prayers, that now we become people. Okay. Now we become who we are. No.
Okay. So it's Islamically, sorry to interrupt, Islamically, what relationship should you have with your in-laws? How do you involve them in your family unit?
Well, again, what I'm saying is that at a young age in this society, it's saying to reject, be independent, be your own self, and you have these false desires, as all have been talking about, implanted at that young age. But at the same time, as you get older, you must, as has been said, be conscientious and conscious of all these facts.
Right.
That's the first and foremost point. As I mentioned in the nikah ceremony, it's driving you to be conscious, to meditate, to reflect at that point when you're about to begin a relationship that includes in-laws. The arham, those who are part of the womb and those who are part of your extended family.
Right.
So there can be no in-law jokes after that point when you said, yes, my contract includes not just this woman, but all those related to them. Equally, I will love them, I'll respect them, I will attempt to be good to them. And thus it kind of diffuses the potential of these conflicts being created in the future, if you keep that in mind at that point. Even though we're growing up in a society where it's a society of mother-in-law jokes that I don't want to see anybody come to us, let's live our life alone in the hills and just be happy and that's good enough, that is all there.
Yeah.
But we have to develop a sense before we marriage of where we're coming from and where we want to go.
Okay. That's quite a conclusive answer. Dr. Saab, there are going to be times where you try reconciliating your marriage, it's not happening. So what options are there available in terms of divorce? When is divorce actually permissible?
Obviously there is, divorce is permissible as such when things break down, and we will hear more about the finer details of that. But there's plenty in advance of that, before that final painful episode is reached, and all sorts of reconciliatory efforts, be that internally within either a family network, or be that within a social network, or be that within the Jamaat system that is provided there. And I'm sure there's no rigid hard and fast rules, but there should be some attempts. Sometimes a close colleague who is close to the two individuals may him or herself be in a particular position to knock some sense into the two individuals. And in other ways, the family where you would hope that may be a benefit can actually be negative in some ways, unfortunately, because a mother will always say, my son is very special, and likewise on the other side, and if they're not true and honest, things will pull and pull and pull, and you reach that stage, unfortunately.
Well, so what's if you could just define the Islamic concept of divorce?
Last resort. That is the last resort. And one should try to reconciliate till the last moment. And the Quran starts with that. When you have disagreements and bitter experiences, there is no harm in trying to reconciliate between the husband and the wife. حَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَحَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهَا. If they cannot resolve the problems themselves, they should call one senior member of that family and this family, and they should sit together, open up and resolve the problems, discuss it thoroughly, and then try to resolve it. That is the way of Islamic teaching. This is the way Islam teaches us. So this is one part of that, as Dr. Saab was correctly saying. And then as a last resort, that you have to operate and get separated, otherwise you cannot go on with your own lives, then that is the time when you have to come to the conclusion of divorcing. Otherwise, no.
Okay. What happens in our society, unfortunately, is that if someone does get divorced, someone is a divorcee, then unfortunately there's a certain stigma attached to that person, and they actually find it hard to move on and remarry again. As I said, how can you get around that?
When you say our society, are you referring to Britain?
To here in the West,
Great
definitely. I
Britain?
mean, I can only give the example of
In America,
UK here.
they don't mind whether you're a divorcee or you're single or you've been married 50 times. You got the money, you got the looks, you got the everything else. They're ready to jump in the
That's a good
relationship.
point, yeah.
Perhaps in the East we're referring to this stigmatization that once a woman has failed and once in her life she's always going to be a failure. There's something defective about her. There's something that the factory made was missing, and therefore that's his tainted property. Never touch it again. That is so un-Islamic that we look at the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Who did he marry? First and foremost, and spent the majority of his life happily married with this woman. She was divorced. So if we as Muslims say that a widowed woman, a woman who has a previous marriage, comes in front of you, she is not a viable candidate, we'll have to say that he was marrying women who were not viable candidates.
That's a fantastic point. I think the audience have got some points on this. Don't you think it's unfair that if someone does have a divorce for whatever reason, they find it so hard to remarry again?
I think, to be honest with you, I think people should fear Allah. If it's whether the woman or the man, sometimes they were matched wrongly or something like that, and Allah decided that they're going to get married, go through a life experience, and they're going to get divorced, and they're going to come out stronger. What I want to kind of ask is it the problem that possibly there's something wrong with, for example, the woman, or is it the fact that she has had physical relations with someone else? Is that the problem why people don't want to marry? For example, the woman or the man, which we have to distinguish that. And if people really consider that and think about it clearly, maybe then they would realize that they would look at the person themselves and not look at the prejudice. Take away the prejudice and look at the person. Is this person got taqwa? Is this person going to be a good wife for me? Or they're just going to sit there saying, "Oh no, she's not, she's not virgin" or something like that.
That's very good. Very good.
Can I make a quick comment here? I started out by saying something which I've hardly heard mentioned in this whole discussion about men and women, and that is the sexuality concept here. We're talking about that we want virgins. We want a woman who will be for us that pure, untouched, the joy of our life, because no one has invaded this land. As we talk about land, this is the fertile territory. And so that is the problem with men's thinking.
Right.
We have to humble ourselves in saying that, again, why is it that even now in Western society, a man can have 50 women before he marries and he can still be a good man, but if a woman has one relationship, she somehow becomes a bad woman. See? And the same with us in terms of the West. We think that because a woman is living in the West, somehow she is tainted. Let me go to the East and find a virgin, beautiful bride, because she somehow is perfect. It is this men's attitude that also interferes, and he's absolutely right that we need to check those attitudes and see them.
Go on. Would you like to?
These stigmas are not just purely a stigma of divorcee. They are racial stigmas. Is your partner black, white, yellow, African, Australian, American, Scottish, Irish? There's all those human prejudices, and those prejudices can be racial, sexual, they can be divorcee, non-divorcee, caste, a whole host, and they can be equally within the East and equally within the West. And it's an issue of, do you allow yourself to tolerate those prejudices, or do you clean yourself of those prejudices?
Abul Sab, do these prejudices actually happen in Eastern culture as
Yes,
well?
they do happen over there, and a lot of them happen. But the solution remains in the hand of a pious person, that inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. You have to look into the piety of the people you are deciding about. So the piety and the chastity, these are the criteria you have to consider. Otherwise, this Bhuiyan is not going to marry that Bhuiyan, and this Chaudhry is not going to get married with that person. This goes on. He was mentioning about caste and racial differentiations. This is very common in the subcontinent, and this is not Islamic at all.
Okay, so one thing I just wanted to confirm, Islamically, if someone has been divorced, there's nothing saying that they shouldn't remarry. There's no stigma attached to them.
Quran has said that the divorcee should get married. And she has to wait a certain time, and after that she is free to get married and settle in life. There is nothing wrong, but moreover, it has been inspired by the Islamic teachings. Among the Muslims, it has been taught that you better resolve the problems of the divorcees first. So divorces should be addressed properly, and that problem is existing in our society. The young generation, the potential brides, grooms we get around, they should make it a point to resolve any problem if they can. This is not an imposing comment I am making. This is advice
Right.
that we should try to make sacrifice for those who are suffering.
Okay. Right, Jazaka, thanks for explaining that.